I'm sure we have all asked ourselves this question at least once in life. Why is the English spelling so weird, so odd? Why is it so complex? Why is the pronunciation so different from spelling? Well, there are obviously many different reasons, and they're all right. I mean, the evolution of the language, the influence of the printed press, and the influence of other languages. But there are some specific people who are to be blamed for this, and they decided to take some letters and put them into English words. Why did they do that? Let's find it out together. Hi Admire friends, welcome back to my channel. It's great to see you here, and today we're going to try and give an answer to this very common question, the question I've mentioned before. So why is the English spelling so weird, so odd? It is complex, and even when you think you have worked it out, there are always exceptions, and there are always words that apparently don't make sense. So obviously we have different answers to this question, and we're going to talk about the most important reasons, and we're also going to mention some people who deliberetely decided to take some letters and put them into English words. They weren't there before, and now they are. Why did they do that? So let's try and find it out together, but let's start from the beginning. And by the way, please like the video and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done it before, please. It means a lot to me, and if you're interested in this kind of topics, we have a lot of stuff here about that. So let's start from maybe arguably the most obvious reason, but that's not that obvious really, which is the fact that around 1600 AD, Christian missionaries arrived to the north, to the lands where this Anglo-Saxon language was spoken, and they arrived with their Roman alphabet, Latin alphabet. So the problem was that Anglo-Saxon people used some sounds that didn't have a letter, in the Latin alphabet. Those letters just didn't exist, because those sounds belonged to a language, the Anglo-Saxon language, which is a Germanic language, so completely different from a Romance language, and this is why these letters didn't exist. So that was a problem for the scribes at the time, because they had to find a way to sort it out. So they had to find some letters or put some letters together to recreate that sound. An example is the sound. I'm sorry, it's not very elegant, but that's the way it was. And obviously there wasn't a letter in the Latin or Roman alphabet that could express the sound. So what did they decide to do? They decided to use a combination of letters, which was in this case G and H. So the language, of course, is always changing, even today, and it was changing at the time. And so also the pronunciation of GH changed. It started being pronounced as an F, in words like, for example, calf or enough. Today we would probably write them using an F or a PH. Or in other cases, this sound, these two letters became silent. In words like, for example, though, it's at the end of the word in this case, or thought. In this case, it's not at the end of the word, but it's still silent. So this is one situation, one situation when, let's say that two letters, or sometimes more than two letters, were put together in order to recreate a sound, and then that sound changed, okay? Another situation is our example number 2, and it's about sounds and letters at the very beginning of the words that went silent. They disappeared. So they are still written today, they still exist in our modern spelling, but they disappeared from the pronunciation. Examples, very common examples really. Right, okay, the W at the beginning disappears, of course. We pronounce it right, as in right, meaning correct. We pronounce it in the same way. And another word, knee. Okay, the knee. Obviously, the key is not pronounced in this case, as it always happens when it is at the very beginning of a word. As for example, in no, knee, and there are knife. Okay, there are many others. Just the same word, same meaning. In German, it's written in another way. It's written K, N, I, E, and it is pronounced in German. You pronounce it Knie. Okay, so same pronunciation, but you pronounce the key at the very beginning of the word, and the other letters are a bit different. But in English, those sounds at the beginning of the words disappeared entirely. Third situation was the great vowel shift. Of course, I don't have time to explain it now. I would need a video, probably more than one, okay, to explain that, but just to let you understand what I mean, okay, most of the vowel sounds changed into another sound, and this is why they are written in a way and often, okay, they're pronounced in a completely different way. Now, this is all well and good, but what happened? Okay, during this period of time when the language was changing and developing, and scribes were trying to find out solutions to express one sound or the other, the printed press was invented. Great invention, amazing, but obviously it brought up a problem, because printers had to come up with their official spelling. They had to, when they had to print a certain text, okay, certain words, certain sounds, they had to pick a version, okay, from the different versions that scribes were using. And that version, once it was printed, became official. So here we start to have canon. We start to have a sort of a canon in the spelling, the English spelling, and then obviously the following text will follow the rule that was decided, okay, by the first printers. The problem is that they did this when the changes, okay, in the language weren't complete, okay, so the language hadn't completed that process of development, and this is why we may have something that okay, maybe there are some words that don't really or some sounds or some ways to represent those sounds that are a bit inconsistent, they don't really match. And this is the reason, because we didn't have a real and final development of the language. They just had to come up with the best solution at the time. And another very important element was obviously the influence of other languages. The first language that comes to our mind is obviously French. We know that in 1066, or if you prefer, 1066, there was the Normans invasion, okay, so William the Conqueror arrived, we all know that, this is the year of Hastings, okay, the Battle of Hastings, we all know that, we have studied that, okay, in our history books. Obviously, this influenced the language like a lot, because French became actually the language of educated people, the language that was used in court, universities, okay, and I mean all those educated environments. It was the language of the educated culture. And of course we have a lot of words that became part of the English vocabulary and also the English spelling. For example, the word beau, which means actually, it means beautiful in French, and the spelling is the French spelling, so it's B-E-A-U, but the pronunciation is beau. And it was used, it is still used, well, arguably, it's a bit démodé today, so it's a bit out-fashioned, but it meant, well, if there was a guy, not a boyfriend, okay, but a follower, it was called a beau, okay. That was very formal. It belonged probably to, well, the last century, maybe 2 centuries ago, but it was definitely an a French word that became part of the English vocabulary, okay, with a different meaning, of course, in different situations, but same spelling. But English borrowed words from other languages as well. Italian, for example, I'm Italian, of course, so I've mentioned a few words here, like zucchini or gnocchi. Obviously, they would pronounce them in a different way. They would never say gnocchi, they would say probably something like gnocchi or zucchini or something like that, okay? But the spelling remained the same. And other words from a lot of different languages, really. I've mentioned guerrilla. Guerrilla is Spanish, of course, but there are thousands of words like those. Some of those words came from languages like German that already had some issues with silent letters. An easy example here, the word kitsch. We use it a lot. It's a German word. We use it when something is, you know, just bad taste, okay, it's kitsch. And in this case, in order to pronounce the ch, we use 4 letters, okay, T-S, C, and H. It's a very typical sound and it's a very typical spelling in German. The word Deutsch, Deutschland, which is German, Germany, is spelled this way, okay, T-S-C-H, and the pronunciation is ch. A bunch of silent letters there that came from another language and they just borrowed it and it became part, okay, of the English spelling as well. Sometimes, this is a fun fact really, because sometimes the same word comes from 2 different languages and there might be a little bit of confusion here. There's one word in particular, and I know that students are always so puzzled. I'll tell you this, I was puzzled, okay, at first when I was a student, and I couldn't wrap my head around this. I'm talking about this word here, written in this way, okay, C-O-L-O-N-E-L, but the pronunciation is not colonel, it's kernel. It's kernel. I wrote it down here. It's not International Phonetic Alphabet, but you can understand that in an easy way. Kernel. Why is it kernel? Why is I mean, that R doesn't exist in the word, it doesn't exist in the spelling. Well, this comes from, originally it comes from a French word that was cornel. Cornel. It had an R here. And then they took also the Italian word colonnello. No, they didn't have an R anymore, there was an L. So they took the Italian spelling with the L, but the French pronunciation with the R remained. And so we had the situation that is a bit weird because it's a bit inconsistent. We got a spelling with an L and a pronunciation with an R. And so today we write it down this way, but we don't pronounce it colonel, we pronounce it kernel. Again, fun fact in the fun fact, the French language has changed, okay, throughout the years too. And so now, today, they will not pronounce it Cornell anymore. They use the L sound too. They say colonel. So this is a bit strange because they took this R from the old French when the modern French uses an L, colonel, as well. So they have an Italian spelling with an L, and the pronunciation comes from the old French, but modern French people would say L, would say colonel too. So this is really something weird, okay? It's something that remained from the past French pronunciation. Well, all right. Let's go back to what I told you at the very beginning of this video. I told you that there were people who decided, and that was a deliberate choice, to take some letters and slash them and put them into English words. It was completely unnecessary because the pronunciation was perfectly, pronunciation and spelling were matching, and there was absolutely no need to do that. So who were they and why did they decide to do this? Well, we're talking about the late 1500s, more or less, and we're talking about Renaissance scholars, so intellectuals. They belonged to the academic world, and at the time, in the 1500s, the language had stabilized. These changes were over. Everything was just fine. But they decided to change something, okay, and they were so fired up about classical languages, so Latin and Greek, that they decided that the glory of the classical world should be mirrored somehow into their modern world. And so they decided to take those words that could have a Latin or a Greek, anyway, a classical root, and change the spelling so they were more similar to the original word. Let's make an example. The word receipt, okay? We know the word receipt, and we know that it is written this way today. So R-E-C-E-I-P-T. So, if we just looked at the word the way it is written, we could imagine it could be pronounced receipt or something like that. Well, it's not. It's a receipt. Why? Well, there was an original word with an original spelling that made completely sense, and it was this one, receipt, without the P. Pronunciation and spelling were perfectly matching, so why did they decide to change it? Well, they went back to the root of the word, which is Latin, and in Latin the same word is recepta. We have a P there, and so they decided we could put the P back into the word. That's a great idea, very easy for people to remember, and this is why the spelling has changed. Same goes for the word salmon, the fish, okay? Salmon, it had no L, but today it is written with an L. Why? It's because they went back to the original word, to the Latin word, and it was salmone. Salmone. So they took the L and put it right in the middle of the word. And now we have to remember that there is this letter here. Of course, it's easier for us, I'm Italian, of course, or people who speak Romance languages, because most of our words come from Latin, and most of our words already have those letters. So we know, if we see that written that way, we can understand. We just have to remember that we don't have to pronounce the letter. Okay, for people who speak, okay, or yes, speak German, for example, Germanic languages, it's the other way around, okay, so the pronunciation is probably more obvious, but you have to remember to put the letter in the word. Same goes for the word debt. Debt, when you're in debt, when you don't have money to give back. There's a B in the spelling today, but we don't pronounce it debt. Okay, it's wrong. In fact, the original word was written in this way, okay, D-E-T-T-E. It's so clean and neat and obvious. Let's say that you don't know the word, okay, for a moment, and you see this word written that way. You don't know the meaning, it's a new word for you, and you see a word written that way. Of course you pronounce it debt. It's so obvious, okay? It follows all the English rules, okay, for spelling, of course. No. They had to change it, and the final E went away, and the double T was replaced by B and T, because the Latin word, the original word in Latin was debitum, so BT. Same goes for Greek words that had a Greek root. For example, asthma. Okay, you pronounce it asthma. Why did you have to put a TH in the middle of the word, for God's sake? Well, they did. So now the way it is written is A-S-T-H-M-A. Why? It's because it was Greek, okay, it came from the ancient Greek. Same goes for the word phlegm, and you may tell me, when would I ever use the word phlegm today? I know it's not common today, but it was at the time, because phlegm was one of the humors that were supposed, according to science, philosophy of the time, of the Middle Age, and also Renaissance. I mean, it was one of the humors that should regulate, okay, the human body and the human emotions. I've talked about that. There's a video in the other playlist about English literature about these things, of the humors. It's very interesting, really. I was talking about Shakespeare, but it's a bit more, it's a bit wider, and that's nice. So the word phlegm, it was very common at the time, and so they decided to change the spelling. Very easy, F-L-E-M-E, phlegm. Phlegm, if you see this word, you pronounce it phlegm, it's obvious. No, they changed it into P-H-L-E-G-M, so phlegm. I don't know how we should be meant to pronounce this. Well, we still pronounce it phlegm, but we have to remember a bunch of letters that are completely silent. But it's okay. It's okay, we'll forgive them. We'll forgive them because they had the best intentions, and they were so enthusiastic, they loved the classical language. It's all right. But there is something we cannot forgive. There is something we cannot forgive, because sometimes they faked a classical root when there was no one. Okay, there were some words that didn't have Latin or a Greek origin. They were just Anglo-Saxon words, but they tried to find a way to make them look as if they came from a classical language. Example, very typical, the word island. Today, when we write island, we write it that way, I-S-L-A-N-D, of course, but that S is silent. Of course, we pronounce it island. And why did they do that? Because they said, well, in Latin, we say insula. So island, insula, yes, it could be. And so they took the S from insula and put it right in the middle of the word island. But, just a tiny detail, this word doesn't come from Latin. It's a 100% Anglo-Saxon language, and it was the ancient way to say England. So it was the most typical word ever. and they changed it, okay, because they wanted to make it sound or look, because it doesn't sound, but it looks more Latin. So yeah, that we can forget that. All right, it's all for today, but as you can see, okay, there are a lot of fun facts, there are a lot of elements and developments that are very, very interesting if we study linguistics and if we love the language, because it's always nice to go back and see what happened in the past and to learn more about the origin and the way the language has developed. If you're interested in this kind of things, please let me know. There's a lot to say, okay, and there's a lot I would like to tell you. For the moment, please, please, please hit the subscribe button if you have enjoyed my content, or the like button for the video. If you can share, I'm very grateful. If you feel like supporting the channel a little bit, there's this button here below, okay, under this video with the little heart, and you can click on it and you go straight to the possibility, okay, to leave something using PayPal. The address, the PayPal address for the channel is Ad Maiora, which is the name of the channel, which is Latin, by the way. I don't know if I've ever told you, Ad Maiora, for those of you who have never studied Latin, is, I was saying a greeting, but it's not a greeting, it's a sort of a wish. When people went away, maybe they said Ad Maiora, and it was a way to say goodbye, but it was also a way to wish better things to other people. So this is the way this is the reason why I chose, I decided to choose this name for the channel. However, I was saying the email address, Ad Maiora altogether, tutor, Ad Maiora tutor, which, by the way, that's a Latin word, tutor, but we pronounce it in an English way, in an Anglo-Saxon way, tutor, but it should be actually tutor, right? However, sorry, I'm digressing. So admaioratutor@gmail.com. That's the email address you find in the description here below, and you can use this if you want to support my channel. And there's also a PayPal button on the home page, okay, of the channel. Just thank you. If you decide to do that, thank you very much, because I mean, I'd like to go on with this activity. It's all for free, and I do it because I love doing it. I love sharing what I love, and I thank you because I've been doing this for quite a few years now, more than 7 years. And the only reason why I'm still here is that's a very simple but very important reason, and that's you. So thank you so much for your support. And as usual, be happy and be safe.